Hello and welcome to the Meeple Mentor YouTube channel. I'm Jared, and with me is Holly. We are doing a review of Lawyer Up Season 1. This is a 1 to 2 player, but just 2 player. I mean, there's a solo mode, but it's a 2 player game. It plays in about an hour, and it's by Mike Gnade and Samuel Bailey. This is a simulation game, if you will, about taking on a case, and we are the prosecution and the defense, and trying to make a case and convince the 12 jurors that you're in the right, and whether it's pro or against the situation. It simulates being in a courtroom. There's a judge card here that flips their favor back and forth throughout the game. There's witnesses you can call, and those are all specific to the cases. And Season 1 comes with a tutorial, Case 0, and Cases 1, 2, and 3. So we did the tutorial and Case 1, so we got the full kind of intro and additional rules added once you start into the core 3 cases. And yeah, so far we've had a very positive experience, I'd say. What are some early thoughts you have here?
I loved it. Let me put that out there. The second time we played it, I loved it. I wasn't much for the tutorial. The tutorial seemed very like a huge swing, and I understand that court cases can be like that, but it was extremely shocking.
So, gameplay-wise, there's deck of cards that that's like your evidence cards, and it has arguments in it and all these things related to the case. And at the start of the game, there's a discovery phase where you shuffle all of that, and then each player gets 3 cards, and you decide which of 3 piles those cards go in. Either the prosecution's pile, the defense's pile, and what they call the buried evidence pile. Mm-hmm. And so that extra deck of cards kind of sits to the side of the table, and sometimes you can access some buried evidence cards, but for the most part, out of your 3, you're drafting which card is going to be helpful to you and which card are going to be maybe least helpful for your opponent, and stuff that you just want to get out of the game, hopefully. And that discovery phase, you then take all those cards set aside for your side. Like, I was usually the defense, so I'd take that set aside for the defense and shuffle it with my standard defense deck. And likewise, she did the same with her standard prosecution deck and shuffle those. Then you get a hand of 5 cards, and starting with the prosecution, they draw or they choose one of the key witnesses near the judge to go into the center of the table, and one by one we take turns essentially grilling these witnesses by using the cards in our hand and gaining influence. We have these dials that keep track of the numerical value of influence that you're earning through each witness examination. And there's also ways to play cards into just sort of a set-aside area called your procedures area, which allows you to trigger actions related to those later. But essentially, you're taking turns playing a card from your hand to the witness on your side, and matching up icons on the cards. Now, it's kind of a matching game when it comes to that, but there's like 6, 7... I think there's 6 icons.
There are quite a few.
6 different bias icons, if you will, is what they call them. Mm. And when you play a card, it has to have at least one matching bias icon on the top of the card, matching what's currently out there. And so for the start, whatever 1, 2, 3, whatever 4 biases are shown on that witness, you have to match at least one of them to play that card and then execute the effect of the card. And then your next card has to then match one on the current topmost card that you have there. And so it's sort of stringing or chaining combinations of cards from your hand in the best way you can through matching these icons. That's the general gameplay feel. And through this process of examining a witness, you're gaining influence number points. Some cards are specifically meant for the prosecution, but if played by the defense, there may or may not be helpful things for it. Sometimes you might just play that card to allow it to chain other cards Sometimes you play it because the exam, immediate effect is beneficial to you, like being able to sway a juror towards your side. But the actual number, which is like the influence number of the card, is not given to you unless it matches your side or it's a neutral card. So there's basically three kinds of these cards that you can play.
One of the things that I enjoyed that was not in the tutorial that it added, that I assume continues in season 1, is when you begin your case, the prosecution or the defense, well, and the defense, actually, you get to choose from 3 different, what are they called?
Defense or prosecution strategies.
Strategies, yes. Yeah. And it's the range of them is comical. It's great. We went from sins of the father to like, what was yours?
She's innocent.
An innocent woman. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's pretty on the extreme of evil or good, and it's very like a court case. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, in the standard cards that are in the standard defense and standard prosecution, they're not specific to any case. So they're stuff that you would commonly see as arguments or general evidence and stuff like that that you could bring up in generally any court case. Like, this is this kind of logical argument, so let's use this. Or it's like legal precedent, and that's this card. And then there's one called Media Circus, and you put
I was
that out
just
there.
going to say, I don't know if it was because we were having so much fun, but Media Circus is by far the most entertaining card.
Like some of it is how you act out a little bit.
Yes, it's absolutely great if you read the flavor text. It really is.
Yeah, you kind of act out a little bit of what you're saying as the lawyer, and that's what that flavor text really is.
It's so much fun.
I really think so. Just for perspective, the first game of the tutorial, we didn't read too much of the flavor text. That's not
We're
gameplay
just trying to figure out how to operate it.
We're just
basically
sort of playing the game and like, okay, this matches up, so I can play it, and what does it do, and let's move on, right? So very, very just gameplay mechanics.
Cut and dry.
The second time we played, I was like, you know what? This is meant to be a court case. Let's get into this. Let's read all the flavor text of every witness and every card we're playing and see, what that brings to the game.
And even with him, I'm kind of shy. So at first, I was so not into this.
It's like, I don't know if I want to read this.
But by maybe the second Media Circus, I agree. It's a Media Circus.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
We had played that back to back. Like I played it
so many times,
and then she played it immediately. I'm like,
see,
she agreed with me. Why aren't you listening to me? And we both got the influence points for it. And I'm like, no. It's like it canceled it out basically. And I'm like, that was my point, jurors. Aren't you listening? Like, so there's a little bit of role playing if you want, just to spice it up. But reading those flavor texts actually really makes the game very entertaining.
If you do it, as they say, once more with feeling.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Because if you kind of take into the role of, like, we're in a courtroom, yeah. I'm reading this, and, okay, this doesn't actually help my case, but it might give me a little bit of a, okay, so I'm just going to read this. Yeah, okay.
Just
moving on.
channel every dramatic court case you've ever seen. Objection!
Yes. That really does make it very, very enjoyable. I highly recommend doing it that way.
Yes.
Once everyone gets an idea for how to play. And again, it's a 2-player game. And it can be very, very funny and very entertaining with very simple game mechanisms.
Yeah, it's not hard.
Yeah, it doesn't take long to grasp the game or to really catch on to how to, do all of it. And so we actually had a really fun time playing through that second case once we've sort of gotten past, what is, like, how does this game work, and getting into the feel of what they were trying to accomplish. It's a really good, credit to them.
I think my favorite part of the second case was the amount of trash talk people who weren't on the stand received.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the cards don't necessarily correspond to the witness at hand because you're randomly drawing.
Sometimes you get like an evidence card that's pro or against, a certain witness, but that witness may or may not be on the stand right then. And yet you have that card, so you have to play it, and so its numerical value will help you, and maybe even the exam, part of the card, the immediate effect, will help you, but the flavor text of it all has no bearing to the person sitting on the chair. And that's where it gets really funny, because it's like, I know you're not this person, but darn it, this guy, he had footage and it was on his computer and he did that. And this girl,
has happened before. It's like, possible.
Okay, but I'm just sitting here. Why are you telling me that? Like,
fantastic.
The humor of that
it's hilarious.
really got to us.
It's great.
It's funny. So I
when
really
have you guys seen us laugh this much talking about a game? I mean,
so I really do like the way that they simplified a game that can really, simulate very well a court case without getting too much into learning the legal mumbo jumbo.
And the best part is I just sat here and said I don't like take that games.
It's true.
But this is a take that game. But it's so hilarious that
it is kind of a take that, because you're constantly going back and forth on this one witness at a time until you get through all the witnesses. Or
no, I object. You have to get rid of that argument, or you have to throw away this piece of evidence, or what have you.
So there's 3 objection tokens that each player gets, and they're usable once each in the game. And again, once per, you can only use one per witness or one examination. And that normally the objection tokens will allow you to cause the opponent to immediately discard an argument card that they just played. There's a variant with judges, like special judges that have like bias icons on them. And when using that, you are allowed to also object to evidence cards, causing the opponent to discard those. But not the ones that are on the judge card's bias. So one of the other 5 bias cards you can object to, but not that one. Those 3 objection tokens really matter because you only get 3, and they very rarely get to refresh. It's possible, but very rarely.
And there are cards to take them from you.
Yes, there are ways to cause your opponent to exhaust their unused objection tokens, and that can be very devastating since you only have 3, and that's a very strong way to oppose your opponent's really good argument card that was going to shoot them above your, the influence. Because your goal here, every witness, is to get more influence than the other player. And then whatever those numbers are, you subtract it from the higher, and then that player uses whatever influence remaining to spend to shift jurors' bias towards them. And the way that works is there's 12 jurors, and essentially there's 2 rows of 1 through 6, and each number there represents how much influence you need to spend to be able to move a bias token on their card one step closer to your side. So think of it as 2 spots on the left for her, 2 spots on the right for me, and you're just like it's a tug of war of moving this disc back and forth. If it's in, the half side for you, then they're in your favor for the end of game purposes. And if they're on the other left 2-most, circle sides, then that's, the others. So you're using your influence after each witness to try to, gain more favor from these jurors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty uproarious. We didn't play with the judge that had the favor on it. After the trial, the tutorial.
Yeah.
After the tutorial, I was like, one thing at a time. Let's ease into it and see how I handle it. But it was great.
It's not a simulation game in the sense that there's only one way a case can play out. Like there's cards that are pro and against every scenario.
It's crazy. They're wild too.
Yeah. It can get very humorous, but like it's very replayable. The same case you could do again, and it a completely different outcome, which would be very interesting, just from the sense of like when you're role playing, it's like, oh, she got away this
Definitely.
time or whatever.
Well, I was sitting there
Like,
thinking, like, when you said there were 3 cases, I was like, that's cool. We could play them like 5 or 6 times each just to see
yeah,
who wins each time.
right, because it is more mechanically about the gameplay of the cards that you play and how you can link those icons together and make best use of those procedure card one-time actions and things like that. So
It's built as a playable game and not as a story to tell.
exactly. But the story you tell is your own.
Right.
And that's really
It's
what's
lots of fun.
interesting. So that makes it, I think it's just a very well-made, well-designed way of simulating a courtroom for 2 players. So if you are, looking for a fun 2-player game that plays in an hour or less, and don't mind a little bit of theater in your gaming, I think this could be a really fun addition to your collection.
Yes, it's lots of fun.
Yeah.
I recommend it.
So, yep, you heard it here. We here at Meeple Mentor certainly approve and recommend Lawyer Up Season 1. Definitely check it out. Thanks for watching our review today, and stick around on the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of our new content, including reviews, unboxings, news, tutorials, and more. So, until the next video, I've been Jared.
I'm Holly.
I'll see you next time.